only seen her in photographs and tiny clips of film. Sir Frederick Ashton actually saw her dance.
I did. I'm one of the few people left who saw Pavlova. I mean, we must be a handful of people by now, because I saw her last matinee at Golders Green just before she died. But I first saw her in Lima, Peru, where I was living at the time. And she came out there, and I suppose it must have been about 1917. And I must have been about 13, perhaps, or 12 or 13, or something of that sort. I was taken to see her, and it was a ballet called The Fairy Dog, which I never really liked very much. And everybody who came out, I kept saying to this South American, said, "Is that her? Is that her?" He said, "No, patience, I'll tell you, I'll tell you." Then suddenly in The Fairy Doll, the curtains were drawn, and there she was. And I said in Spanish, "Que fea," which means, "How ugly she is."
Oh, no.
You know, she had a very positive appearance. She wasn't my idea of a beautiful woman. So it gave me quite a shock, but he said, "Wait till you see her dance." And then, of course, once she started, then I came under the spell, from which I've never lost it.
You kept this memory?
Yes. From that moment, I wanted to dance also, and I never looked back from that time. She was the strongest theatrical personality I've ever seen. Appearance. And even if you see her in life in ordinary clothes, she never looks dated. She never looks old-fashioned somehow, because she was so stylish, and she had such natural elegance that somehow she never looks ridiculous. Also in Peru, when I heard what hotel she was staying at, I went and stood outside and waited for her to come out. And I remember her coming out and getting into a carriage, because those were carriage days. And the way that she got into the carriage and the walk and her elegance of her costume was extraordinary.
How she will have, "Hello, taxi, stop here." How she will do that?
Very impetuously, as you can imagine, yes. She knew how to project magic, about, not only on the stage, but in private life of herself. When you saw her coming out of the stage door at Covent Garden, I mean, the limousine was all lit up, it was all prepared. The flowers came up and were put there and the whole thing, and then suddenly she would stand at the door.
And how about the crowd who were waiting for
Well, when they were all waiting outside, she would come out with a bouquet, and she'd get into the car, and then she would tear it apart and throw it to the fans who were there.
They must be ecstatic.
And then drive off in a lit car. And she would always have on a white fur coat, and with her very black hair, she used to look wonderful. Although her dancing was extraordinary, and you know, the flexibility of her hands and her arms.
What about the foot?
And this glorious foot and beautiful legs. She had all that, you see. But, I mean, technically, I suppose she was very sort of limited. She had highlights, and she could do certain things. Do you remember that film we saw her, the way she went back like that? And she had tremendous speed. And plus all that, enormous grace.
Grace,
which
natural grace.
Which now I don't see so much in dancers.
No?
This incredible grace. In that day you had grace in life, you had grace on the stage. You
mean now we don't have grace
no,
in life?
I think not to that extent, because people don't want to please. In those days you wanted to please.
What is mystery? All this mystery, you know, this must be these people like Pavlova had some sort of mystery inside.
Oh, yeah,
That's
absolutely.
why it came out.
Well, she had, I mean, for want of a better word, as a dancer, she had genius. I mean, when you think that how limited her vocabulary was, but whatever she was doing, she became that person.
Yes.
And she was that person.
She didn't pretend.
No, she was. Whether she was being a swan or a rose.
She was a swan.
She was a swan, and if she was a rose, I mean, she had the perfume of a rose, and she danced. I mean,
so much to believe yourself in your image.
Fragrance came out. And then there was this tremendous impact on the public that she had. The way that she came out, I mean, she came out in a very positive way. I mean, I remember the spotlight would tremble up to the corner where she was coming out. and wait there, and then she would rush into it, and she had this incredible balance that she could rush onto the stage and hold it for quite a time. Well, she was alive from the top of her head to her toe. I mean, everything, while she danced, everything was vibrant. You see, people now can become quite dead. They can be wonderful from the legs downwards, or you probably have never used their palmon, never used their eyes.
But in Pavlova, I see everything done.
Everything. It was
even eyes done.
Yes, absolutely. Some of her dances look like improvisations, don't they?
Yes,
they look
all
as though
of
the
them
music
look
was
like
played and as though she just got up and danced. She personified dance. On the stage, she had a wonderful walk. The way that she approached the public, the way she bowed, was a dance in itself. When she did the swan, she used to dart out from different angles of the stage. You never knew where she was coming from. And each call was different.
And how the following spots, how we know where she's coming from?
No, you didn't know where she was. No, well, she didn't necessarily have a spot at that moment. But you never knew where she was coming from, out or from how. Sometimes she would run out, and other times she'd walk. You can't be really applauding me. I mean, you know, that's sort of assumed.
Should we learn to do that?
Assumed humility. Another time she'd, thank you, you know, and all this. So you know.
Do you think everything was planned? Or
everything.
Really?
I think so.
She must have a special technique. It is not probably technique from our point of view now, our days, because many dance now technique is virtuoso, but she has something specific technique.
Well, every great dancer must have an individual approach to her dancing, plus